Udlakut, hello, bonjour. It's great to be here today. Let me begin by acknowledging that we are on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. Thank you for joining us as we are here to share two very important announcements about the action we're taking on the cost of food in the North. We know that northern communities face challenges, food prices keep rising, and remote families feel it the most. Nous savons que les communautés du Nord sont confrontées à de nombreux enjeux. Le prix des denrées alimentaires ne cesse d'augmenter et ce sont les familles isolées qui en souffrent le plus. Distance, fuel, and shipping costs make these necessities even more expensive. We need to take action so that Northerners can afford the basics. When it comes to addressing these challenges in the North, we recognize that the most effective solutions come from those who live and breathe the Northern experience. That is why I am so pleased to announce the appointment of former president of Nunavut Tunangvik Incorporated, Ms. Aluki Kotierk, as the Minister's Special Representative to provide an independent external review of the Nutrition North Canada program. I want to thank her for taking on this important role, and I'm confident her expertise and dedication will greatly benefit Northerners and all Canadians. Je tiens à la remercier d'avoir assumé ce rôle important, et je suis convaincu que son expertise et son développement profiteront grandement aux habitants du Nord. Ms. Kotierk will start immediately to engage with national and regional Indigenous organizations, retailers, transportation providers, and other stakeholders, as well as relevant federal government organizations to review the program. A final report with the recommendations will be delivered in 2026. As an Inuk and Northerner from Igloolik, Ms. Kotierk brings exceptional knowledge and personal experience to this role. She's deeply committed to including Inuit culture and language in public programs and services, making sure they benefit Inuit communities. Only someone with first-hand knowledge, equipped with the right tools and deep cultural understanding, can truly provide us with a path forward that will work for Northerners. I'm thrilled about Ms. Kotierk's appointment and can't wait to work with her in this new capacity. In parallel to her work as Minister's Special Representative, I'm also announcing today that up to $20 million in funding has been set aside under Nutrition North to help meet the increasing food security challenges facing children and families in the North. These subsidies are already helping to make nutritious food more affordable for Northern families. For example, in Kinget, Nunavut, 4 liters of milk would have cost over $39, compared to a much more reasonable, albeit still high, $11.99 with the subsidy. In Igloolik, bananas are $5.16 a kilo versus $12.11 without the subsidy. The prices of many items are still far too expensive, but we are making progress. Already 124 northern communities from Labrador to Yukon are seeing the cost reduction of these subsidies. As Minister of Nutrition North Canada and Minister responsible for the Canadian Northern Economic Development Agency, I will continue to work tirelessly so that nutritious, healthy food remains affordable in many northern communities. This is absolutely necessary to ensure the health and well-being of northern families. C'est absolument nécessaire pour garantir la santé et le bien-être des familles du Nord. Working hand in hand with Indigenous leaders to ensure food security in northern communities is what reconciliation is all about. But by turning our promises into actions, we can build a future where Northerners have control over their food systems with access to healthy, culturally appropriate foods through subsidies and other programs. Kuyanamik, thank you, merci. And I'd now like to invite Ms. Aluki Kotierk to say a few words.
Koyanami Marer Kovesk Bunga Minister Tikwamanga. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very honored to be appointed by the Minister Anandasangaree. Thank you. I think this is a very important role. I'm most familiar with Nunavut and Inuit Nunangat. In Nunavut, 7 out of 10 children go to bed hungry every night. And we know that statistic, and it's unacceptable. And I'm really thrilled to be appointed to this position because I feel like I will have the opportunity to build on things that currently work. Having been the former president of Nunavut Tungavik Incorporated, for instance, I was very pleased with the Harvester Support Grant that was able to support harvesters to get good, nutritious food from our lands. And I think that I'm very excited to learn more about the other communities and what works well in those communities and work having a building block on, for instance, the Inuit Nunangat food security strategy. So I'm looking forward to this opportunity to build on those experiences and learn new things and convey very pragmatic recommendations to the Government of Canada on this, because I think I'm always saying as Inuit, we're very pragmatic and we take the long view. And I hope that I'm able to use those strengths to be able to deliver something that would be useful for the Government of Canada. And most importantly, for us as Inuit, Inuit Nunangat, and for Northerners across the North. Koyanami.
Kuyanamik, Aluki, thank you for your leadership, and I'm so excited that you will be taking on this very important role.
I have a question for Ms. Kotierk to start off. Hi, Aluki. For Canadians who may be watching that may not understand why such a review is needed of the Nutrition North program, I'm wondering if maybe you can describe your experience with the program and maybe some of the challenges that you've seen with it.
I think there's been a lot of questions about how the subsidies have actually reached the consumer. And so it's really important that there be a review, and I know there's a current evaluation happening by the Canadian government. I think my role will be to look at the current program and see if there's any ways it could become more efficient or more effective, or if there are other programs that would help support, ensure that Northerners get nutritious, good food at a efficient or kind of cost-effective manner.
So what's been your experience with the program, though, shopping in Iqaluit and in other communities?
I mean, like everyone, food costs are very expensive in Iqaluit and across Nunavut, across the north. So my experience has not been any different than anyone else who's experienced the high cost of food. In fact, sometimes there are occasions that you have a craving for something and you go to the store and you pick it up and you realize how much it is. Then you decide at that moment your craving is not that strong and you will not have it. So I think that's a very common experience that Northerners have. And it's often a treat when you travel to the south, southern Canada, and you'll see with our airlines, for instance, that so many of us travel around with big Rubbermaid tubs because any opportunity we have to go to the south, we fill it up with groceries to bring back home. So I think that's a very common experience. And I will say, and that's a privilege for some Northerners, because of course not all Northerners have the opportunity or have ever been to the south of Canada.
Particularly with the baggage rules that came into place last year.
Oh, yes, it's so true. And now I hear the airline is being sold, but that's another story.
So Fraser from ABTN, I just wanted to pick up on that a little bit. We did an investigation last year that showed the northern store was, like many grocery stores in this inflationary times, they were taking advantage of prices and actually raising their prices, and that not all of the subsidy, of course, is being returned to the consumer, and that they had really not been transparent at all. So will the government actually, if find out this is the case and confirm it, make moves to ensure that all the subsidy goes back to the consumers, and that if stores like the Northern Store are doing this, there'll be penalties and they will not see any of this subsidy?
Thank you, Fraser. Thank you for that question. And certainly, I have watched the documentary, and of course, we're concerned about the allegations that were made there. Make no mistake, I think we're taking a number of very important steps towards addressing food security, especially issues around the cost of food in the north. As Ms. Kotierk said, there is an internal review that's taking place. The MSR role is a very broad mandate where we're looking for advice that will enable us to make the right decision. And if there are inconsistencies or if there's issues around potential issues around savings not being passed on, we will take decisive action. That's not. I won't make any qualms about it. We will take decisive action. On top of that, one of the things that I think we're exploring right now, I've spoken to Minister Francois Philippe Champagne as well, is to look at issues around the Competition Bureau, whether there are possibilities where if there are costs that are somewhat fixed, if their prices are not quite up to market conditions, it may be appropriate for the Competition Bureau to also look at this issue in the north especially, and to highlight to Canadians what that means. And again, that would potentially require enforcement, and that's something the Competition Bureau can look at. So I do believe that's another additional step that can be taken, and I am in discussions with Minister Francois Philippe Champagne on this issue.
No questions for Ms. Kotierk. Some of the stories I've done, they've been limited, but we've heard back that really it's the smaller producers and the actual Indigenous producers are producing food, but they don't have much help to do it, that they haven't been funded. I mean, there are enough that could be done locally at less cost, but they just haven't been supported. Is that what you found, or would you like to see a broader support for this subsidy of different producers?
Thank you for that question. I really like that question because it provides the opportunity to imagine what could be. I've had the opportunity to travel to Greenland, and they have open markets where they have food from the land that the Inuit have harvested. And I've often wondered why we don't have that, for instance, in Nunavut. And so I think for me, just embarking on this journey, I'm open to all the possibilities and trying to figure out how do we best support Northerners to be able to get good, nutritious food that meets their food preference, celebrates the culture, but is also cost effective. So that I'm going very broad with it in my mind right now, but I will say that sometimes we have big, bold dreams that we might not be able to achieve. And I guess as I go on this journey, I'll see more and more what could pragmatically be possible. Maybe there are barriers to why that doesn't occur here in Canada when it does in Greenland, for instance.
I have a question for the Minister. Minister, the Indigenous and Urban Affairs Committee back in 2021 had come out with a recommendation to do this exact thing, to have an external review. Just as well, last year, your predecessor had said that the government was not planning to do that, then he switched tunes and said they would. Why has the government been so resistant to taking this step in the past? I can appreciate this hasn't been your file for that time, but why has it been so resistant, and why now?
Well, to be very clear, I took on this role in December, and basically from the beginning of my mandate on the North, I have tasked the department with moving forward on a ministerial special representative. Obviously, the process takes a little bit of time in order to do the proper vetting and applications, and I think we've moved as fast as we can in order to ensure that the MSR is appointed and they have the mandate to be able to do the work they're tasked to do. This is a very serious issue. I've been to the North a number of times since my appointment. I'm going back tomorrow to Nunavut, and it's very difficult when you look at the cost of food for families to make ends meet. And it is something that we have to double down on, and to ensure that we have every single tool that we're able to unleash on attacking food, the cost of food and food security, to be done so in the north. And this is a very important step, as well as the additional $20 million investments into Nutrition North, I think are very critical steps towards ensuring greater food security.
Just on that $20 million, I think last year's annual budget for the program was $144 million. That goes up by 5% a year to account for inflation. So $20 million, quick math, about 15% of the budget from last year. Realistically, what can that money do for the program?
Look, it's at the very minimum to ensure that the cost of living increases is funded, and we know that costs in the north have cost of living increase in the north have far exceeded that in the south. So this is in part to augment the increased costs of food. The north, not necessarily maintain prices. We're hoping that it will help drive down prices, and I cited a couple of examples where we've seen that. We're looking for additional areas where core food items, the prices are subsidized and ideally go down.
I just have a quick question for the minister here. You've endorsed Mark Carney for leader of the Liberal Party, and although he's touched on Indigenous issues here and there, he hasn't necessarily made reconciliation a central issue in his campaign. So why do you think that he's the best person for the job, and how can you assure Canada's northern and Indigenous communities that he will act in their best interests?
I have spoken to Mark Carney on this issue, and I'm very confident of his commitment to reconciliation. I am also confident of his ability to ensure that equity is a principal part of his mandate. I have also been in touch with many colleagues who I consider to be quite progressive and who have been leaders, including Minister Haidu, Minister Miller, former Minister Lametti, and I believe that we are very much in alignment. That Mark Carney represents the best possible leader for Canada, including on issues around reconciliation. I've also heard from a number of Indigenous leaders from coast to coast to coast who reaffirm that. So I'm very, very comfortable in endorsing him. I know there's a debate tonight, and I'm very confident that that he will be the best alternative to Pierre Poilievre. As you know, Mr. Poilievre went to the north. He made some very important announcements about the north, but without bringing in northerners. So I do believe there's a fundamental difference in the way Mr. Carney will address reconciliation in comparison to the alternative.
Just on a different point, you both mentioned the importance of food security, especially when it comes to children in the north. The NDP has been demanding that the Inuit Child First initiative be extended, and although the funding for the program runs out next month, will you extend it? What's your response to that?
Look, this is a very important initiative. It's supported thousands of young people in the north, especially in Nunavut. We very much have been working to ensure that the program continues in Nunavut, and Minister Haidu has been tasked to work on that. It is part of her portfolio. But one of the things that I will encourage my NDP colleagues is that these are critical issues of fairness and importance to Indigenous people. So when we talk about reconciliation, especially in the current political context, this is not something that our government could do alone. So when a leader of when a leader rips up an agreement and says, we're no longer supporting supply and confidence, these are some of the consequences. So I'm going to reiterate that there's a need for collaboration here. This should not be a political issue. This is one where children being supported should be central to the work of government, especially political parties who have a stated objective of supporting reconciliation. So my response would be to work with us and to ensure that programs such as this continue and children don't get left behind.
I have a question kind of following up on what my colleague was for the minister. You're saying that Carney is the best suited on Indigenous issues out of the Liberal leadership candidates, but the only person on the debate stage yesterday to mention them even briefly was Karina Gold. What we've heard from Carney is that he would put a deal on the table that First Nations have voted against on multiple occasions. I'm just kind of confused as to how he would be the best person if he's putting forward things that communities don't want. He hasn't talked about it publicly besides that one thing that communities don't want.
I'm going to just, in a broader context, I think it's important that more conversations and more discussions take place around reconciliation. I think it needs to be part of the national debate, and I'm very confident that in today's debate, these issues will come out. I think we have to look at, Karina is a, I would say it's a dear friend, someone I have deep respect for, and of the people that have put their names forward, I believe that Mark Carney does represent the best alternative to Pierre Poilievre. He would be the one that can build an economy as well as ensure that nobody's left behind. In this particular case, reconciliation is so central. It's one of the reasons I ran for politics. It's one of the reasons that we have received as a party support from many parts of the country, from Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. And that's why this record and the work around reconciliation is so important for us to continue. Just, I think last week we agreed on recognizing Haida title, Aboriginal title to Haida Gwe. It's the first of its kind agreement that the Government of Canada has entered into. Similarly, just yesterday we signed a revenue sharing agreement between the Vancouver International Airport and the Musqueam First Nation. There are some very important steps that we have taken as a government that I know that Mr. Carney will continue, and I look forward to his leadership. And I know that the party, once the leadership is concluded, will rally around the new leader, and I'm hoping it'll be Mr. Carney.
All right, for people joining us online, just a quick reminder to use the raise hand function. I see we have questions online, so Luke Carroll, the floor is yours. Luke, we can't hear you. All right, well, Luke, we can't hear you. I'll go to Shannon Scott, and then we'll come back to Luke.
Hi, thank you. Ms. Kotierk, I'm wondering for our audience for Igalak today, if you could explain your role and what you hope to achieve in Inuktitut.
Koyan na me aperigavi tikko tau sartunga gava matokakko minister nganon dana atokto katakto nikitiavang no akikinnarsarno kamagiyaullo ni piliriariyaw katakto kimeruyaw kuyaulunga kano aaqiyarunnang mga kano piunikang mga Qimirrurugo aqaaguraartumi 2026 nguriqpa unikkaariami saqqitittinayarlunga aturiquyawna sugiyanni gavamatoqakkunnu taanna aaqigiartauyariaqarasugigukku quyannamin.
Follow up?
Yeah, Nakomik. And for the minister, I'm actually going to ask Luke's question since we're in the same building and he wasn't able to get his microphone to work. Luke's wondering, in response to the class action lawsuit that was launched against the Northwest Company last week, or the potential class action lawsuit, pardon me, is this announcement coming today in response to that potential lawsuit, which is alleging that the Northwest Company isn't passing on all of the subsidies to consumers?
Absolutely not. This announcement has been in the works for many months, and this is a response to a much broader set of issues that we've heard. As a government, we've heard. As a minister, I've heard in my relatively short period of time in this role, and we're hearing people. And I myself, every time I go to the north, I make it a point to visit as many stores as possible, just randomly checking out of prices on vegetables, on fruits, on nutritious meals. I also look to see where the subsidy is, and the numbers that we talk about, the cost is staggering, and is one that requires a response from the federal government. It is not about this issue is not about a single company or a single outlet. This is about a much broader issue of food security in the north. It is also about the program that the federal government has to see its effectiveness, how we can improve it, how we can reshape it if necessary. And it is about ensuring that we get to the root causes of the issues above and beyond what a particular outlet or store would be charging.
Do you have any other questions, Shannon?
I do, thank you. Luke's follow-up question would be, if the minister's response to this proposed class action lawsuit and the insinuation that there is a company out there who is taking government money and not passing it on properly.
I would say that the requirements of the program are quite stringent. There is an internal review that's taking place. Ms. Kotierk is tasked to look at this from an external perspective, but with a broader sense of understanding of food security in the north as an overall theme. And anything that is happening from a legal perspective, whether it's a class action or any other actions that individuals may be taking, it is really up to the courts to determine that. This is outside of my purview, and my task is to ensure that basic necessities are available at an affordable rate to Northerners.
This concludes the press conference.
Thank you.
Very much.